The music was soft and elegant, the hall glowing with golden light. Guests laughed, glasses clinked, and the smell of roasted lamb filled the air. My brother's wedding was the grandest thing my family had ever hosted. I wore a long silver dress that shimmered under the lights. I had spent hours getting ready, telling myself that tonight I would be treated like I belonged, like I mattered. When I walked into the hall, my eyes searched for my seat. The tables near the stage were filled with family, close friends, and business partners. I expected to see my name there. Instead, one of the staff members guided me toward the far corner, past the decorated arch, past the main tables, and then through a side door. They pointed to a small table near the kitchen doors. It was where waiters came in and out carrying trays. Plates clattered, staff whispered orders, and the smell of grease and detergent filled the air. There was my seat card, Sarah. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I asked one of the cousins, "Are you sure this is right?" Maybe my name card was put in the wrong place. She gave me an awkward smile, the kind that hides pity. "That's where your mom told us to put you. She said it's quieter back here." Then she slipped away before I could answer. I sat down slowly, my hands trembling in my lap. From my chair, I couldn't see the bride and groom clearly. I couldn't hear the speech as well. Every time the kitchen doors swung open, a rush of heat and noise hit me. A waiter almost spilled soup on me when he hurried past. I looked toward the main hall, where my parents sat proudly at the front, smiling, clapping, raising glasses with Daniel and his new wife. I wanted to stand, to walk there, to demand a place at their table. But my legs felt heavy. My throat burned. I could almost hear my mother's voice in my head. "Don't make a scene, Sarah. Don't embarrass us." The laughter from the main hall felt like knives. Every cheer for my brother made me smaller. I had helped him all these years through school, through the early days of the company. I was the one who stayed up late, drafting plans, solving problems. Yet here I was sitting with the staff, invisible. I forced myself to smile at a waiter who looked sorry for me. I lifted my glass of water, pretending it was champagne. But inside, I was breaking. I felt the heat rise in my chest, not just embarrassment, but a rage that shook me. I stared at the tablecloth, willing myself not to cry. The humiliation was sharp, heavy, unforgettable. My own family had chosen this. In that moment, I knew something had shattered. Whatever bond one thought I had with them, whatever hope I still held for their respect, was gone. And as I sat there, half hidden in the shadows of the kitchen door, I made a silent promise to myself. They would never treat me like this again. I was never the shining star in my family. From the time I was young, I learned that Daniel, my older brother, carried the crown. My parents looked at him with pride, called him the future, and pushed all their hopes onto his shoulders. With me, it was different. My mother always told me to help your brother, or don't get in the way. My father was quieter, but his silence spoke the same truth. It wasn't that I lacked ability. I was smart. I worked hard. I was the one who stayed behind after school to finish projects, the one who learned how to balance accounts before I was even out of college. When Daniel struggled with classes, I tutored him. When he got his first job interview, I prepared him. When our parents started the small company that would later grow, I was the one who sat in front of the computer late into the night, building spreadsheets, drafting proposals, and even answering emails under Daniel's name. But when credit was given, it never had my name on it. At family dinners, my mother would brag, "Daniel handled the new client today," even though I was the one who had stayed up until 2 a.m. preparing the presentation. If I spoke up, she brushed me aside with a smile. "Don't make it about you, Sarah. Be supportive. That's your role." Supportive. That word stuck like a thorn in me. It meant being useful but never recognized. It meant standing in the background so Daniel could shine. Daniel wasn't cruel when we were kids. In fact, when we were small, he used to rely on me. But as we grew and our parents lifted him higher, he began to believe it too, that he was the leader, the rightful heir, the one who mattered. His words changed. His tone carried superiority. "You're good at helping," he would say, "but you're not really cut out to run things." I swallowed those words again and again, convincing myself that if I worked harder, if I proved myself, they would see me. But the years only proved the opposite. The more I did, the more invisible I became. The company grew fast. It wasn't just a small family business anymore. It became something real, something important. Investors came, contracts were signed, and profits soared. And through all of it, I was there building, fixing, smoothing every problem that came. My name was on the documents. My ideas shaped entire departments. Still, when people outside praised the brilliant Daniel, my parents smiled as if that praise was theirs, as if I had been nothing but a shadow in the background. My mother had a way of making me feel small even in ordinary moments. If I dressed nicely, she would comment, "Don't try too hard, Sarah. It doesn't suit you." If I spoke about my work, she would cut me off, turning the conversation back to Daniel. Sometimes she looked at me as if I was a guest in her house, not her daughter. I tried to ignore it, to remind myself that families are complicated, that love doesn't always look the same. But the truth was simple. They didn't see me, not really. Not as a leader, not as an equal, not even as someone who deserved a place at the table. There were times I thought about leaving, about building something of my own. But the company was my blood too. I had poured too much into it, piece by piece, year after year. Walking away felt like giving up a child I had raised. I told myself to endure, to wait, to believe that one day they would finally acknowledge me. But the waiting became heavy. The small cuts of dismissal, the stolen credit, the constant reminder that Daniel was the one while I was just the helper. Those cuts turned into scars. The wedding night only opened the wound wider. It wasn't just about a chair by the kitchen door. It was years of being told quietly and loudly that I did not belong, that I was not worthy of the place I had already earned. I realized then that invisibility was not an accident. It was their choice. My mother chose it every time she praised Daniel and silenced. My father chose it every time he let her words stand without defense. And Daniel chose it every time he accepted my work as his own without so much as a thank you. For years, I thought if I was patient enough, if I worked hard enough, they would finally open their eyes. But that night, watching them laugh at the front while I sat among the waiters, I understood the truth. They had no intention of ever seeing me. And that truth hurt more than anything else. Because all I ever wanted was to belong to my own family. I slipped out of the wedding hall before the dancing began. No one noticed. No one called my name or asked where I was going. My silver dress dragged lightly on the carpet as I walked out alone, my heels clicking against the floor. Outside, the night air was cool, but my face still burned from shame. I told myself I was leaving early because I was tired, but the truth was I couldn't bear another hour of pretending. I drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past me, and all I could see in my head was the image of my family laughing, smiling, clinking glasses while I sat beside the kitchen door. I had thought humiliation was enough pain for one. I didn't know it was only the beginning. At home, the house felt too quiet. I poured myself a glass of water, but I couldn't drink it. My chest was too tight. I changed out of my dress, folded it carefully, and sat on the edge of my bed. For a while, I just stared at the floor numb. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an old coworker popped up. It wasn't unusual. We sometimes exchanged updates about the company. But this time, the message was strange. Did you know about the transfer? I thought you'd be part of it. I frowned. Transfer? My fingers trembled as I typed back. What transfer? A few minutes later, a PDF appeared on my screen. It was blurry, but I recognized the letterhead of our family company. As I opened it, my heart sank. It was an agreement, dated only a few days earlier. It stated that all controlling shares of the company would be moved into Daniel's name. Not shared, not divided. All of them. I scrolled through, my pulse racing. At the bottom, there were signatures. My father's. My mother's. Daniel's. My name wasn't there. The words on the page seemed to blur. I rubbed my eyes, but the truth didn't change. They hadn't just embarrassed me at the wedding. They were cutting me out of the very thing I had built with. Erasing me. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I stood, pacing the room, my thoughts spinning. How long had they planned this? Was this why my mother always brushed off my questions about the company's direction? Was this why Daniel smirked every time I tried to voice an opinion? I thought of all the nights I stayed up finishing reports, all the clients I convinced to stay when they wanted to leave, all the times I carried the weight no one else wanted to touch. And now, with the stroke of a pen, they had decided I was nothing. Tears burned my eyes, but they weren't soft tears of sadness. They were hot, sharp tears of betrayal. I remembered the wedding table again, how they placed me near the kitchen as if I were staff, not family. It wasn't just about a seat. It was the truth made visible. To them, I had never been at the table. And now, they had made sure I never would be. I sank into the chair at my desk, staring at the document on my screen. For a long time, I couldn't move. My mind kept replaying the years of silence, the years of dismissal, and now, this final act of betrayal. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. They had chosen Daniel, fully and completely. And in choosing him, they had chosen to erase me. The humiliation of the wedding was one wound. But this was the knife driven deep. That night, I felt something inside me shift. A line had been crossed, one that could never be undone. I wasn't just the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the enemy they wanted out of the picture. And if that was what they wanted, they were about to learn who I really was. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a heavy head. For a moment, I thought maybe I had dreamed it all. But when I unlocked my phone, the document was still there, waiting, as real and sharp as the night before. My chest tightened again. I knew I couldn't keep silent. I needed answers. I drove to my parents' house, rehearsing in my head what I would say. I told myself to stay calm, to demand an explanation. But as soon as I stepped into their living room and saw my mother arranging flowers as if it were any ordinary day, my anger started to boil. Why didn't you tell me? My voice was louder than I meant it to be. She looked up, surprised. Tell you what? She asked, tilting her head with that same false sweetness she always used when she wanted to make me feel foolish. The transfer, I said, holding up my phone. You gave everything to Daniel. Everything. And you didn't even tell me. Her eyes flickered for a second. Then she put the flowers back into the vase. Sarah, don't make this dramatic. We made the decision that was best for the family. Best for the family? My voice cracked. I am family. Do I not count? My father stepped into the room then, holding his newspaper. He didn't look angry, just tired. Sarah, you've always been supportive, and we appreciate that. But Daniel is the one who will carry this forward. It makes sense. I stared at them, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. You're erasing me. Do you even understand that? Everything I've done for the company, all those years, all those nights, do they mean nothing? My mother sighed as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. You helped, yes. But helping isn't the same as leading. Don't confuse the two. Those words cut deeper than any knife. Helping. Always helping. Never enough to stand beside them. I turned and left before I exploded. My hands shook as I drove to Daniel's office. He needed to hear me. Maybe he would understand. Maybe he would finally see me. When I walked in, he was leaning back in his chair, feet on the desk, scrolling on his phone. He barely looked up. Sarah, he said, smiling smugly. You look upset. Let me guess, you found out. You knew. My voice trembled. Of course I knew, he said casually. I've been planning this with Mom and Dad for months. It's nothing personal. It's just the way things should be. I stepped closer. Nothing personal? Daniel, I built that company with you. I was there every step of the way. How can you act like I don't exist? He leaned forward, finally meeting my eyes. There was no kindness in his face, only arrogance. You're good, Sarah. You've always been good at helping, but you're not a leader. You don't have what it takes to run things. You drown in responsibility. I'm saving you the trouble. The words hit me like a slap. I stared at him, waiting for him to laugh, to take it back. But he didn't. He leaned back again, grinning like he had won. Something inside me cracked. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore, but I didn't want him to see me cry. I turned and walked out, my chest burning with shame and fury. By the time I reached my car, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely unlock the door. His words kept replaying in my head. Just a helper. I had spent my whole life proving myself, and this was what I got. Dismissed. Mocked. Erased. That night, I called an old friend, Maya, a lawyer I had known since college. She had always believed in me, even when my family didn't. When she picked up, I could barely speak, my voice breaking as I told her everything. She listened quietly, then said, Sarah, do you have any of the old company paperwork? From when it first started? Yes, I whispered. I kept copies. Why? Bring them to me tomorrow, she said firmly. If what you're saying is true, you may have more power than you think. The next day, I sat in her office with a stack of files. She flipped through them quickly, her eyes sharp. Then she stopped, pointing at a page. Here, she said. Your name. You signed as a founding partner. Do you realize what this means? I shook my head, confused. It means they can't just erase you, she explained. Legally, you have rights. Depending on the percentages and how things were filed, you might actually hold significant ownership. If they tried to transfer everything without your consent, it's invalid. For a moment, I just stared at her. The words didn't seem real. You mean, I still have a claim? More than a claim, she said. You may have leverage strong enough to challenge the whole transfer. But you have to decide, Sarah. Do you want to fight this? Or are you going to let them take everything? I leaned back in the chair, my heart pounding. I thought of my parents' cold dismissal, of Daniel's mocking smile, of the kitchen table at the wedding. I thought of all the years I had been invisible. The choice sat heavy in front of me. Fighting meant tearing the family apart completely. It meant a battle that would change everything forever. But walking away meant losing not only the company, but myself. For the first time in my life, I felt the weight of real power in my hand. And it scared me as much as it thrilled me. Maya's voice was calm but steady. They underestimated you, Sarah. They always have. Maybe it's time you stop underestimating yourself. I left her office that day with the documents clutched in my bag, my mind a storm. The battle line had been drawn, and I knew deep down that I could never go back to being silent. The boardroom was colder than I remembered. Long glass table, leather chairs, and a wall of windows that showed the city skyline. I had sat in this room countless times, always in silence, always taking notes or fixing problems behind the scenes. But today was different. Today, I wasn't here to help. I was here to claim what was mine. When I walked in, the room was already full. My parents sat at the head of the table, Daniel beside them, looking smug as ever. Around the table were board members, investors, and lawyers. Conversations hushed the moment I stepped through the door. Daniel leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Sarah," he said slowly, as if amused. "This is a closed meeting." I met his eyes, steady and unflinching. "Not anymore." My mother's voice cut in, sharp and annoyed. "What are you doing here? Don't embarrass yourself." I walked to the table, dropping a folder of papers with a firm thud. "Embarrassment? That's what you gave me at the wedding. But this," I tapped the folder, "this is different. This is truth." The board members shifted, curious. Daniel frowned, his smirk fading. I opened the folder and spread out the documents. Old contracts, partnership papers, company formation records. "You all signed an agreement years ago, and so did I. As you can see, I am not just a helper. I am a founding partner. I hold ownership rights. Which means the transfer you made to Daniel is invalid. Illegal, actually." A murmur spread across the table. My father's face stiffened. My mother tried to speak, but her voice shook. "Sarah, you don't understand how business works." I cut her off. "No, you don't understand. You've spent years convincing me I was nothing. But these papers prove otherwise. My name is here. My signature is here. And you cannot erase me." Daniel slammed his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She's just trying to stir trouble." But I saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. I pulled out another stack of papers. "Trouble? Let's talk about trouble. These are financial reports. I had them reviewed by professionals. Do you know what they show? Mismanagement, overspending, deals signed without proper oversight. Daniel, you've been running this company into the ground while taking all the credit. Investors are losing faith. Contracts are slipping. If it weren't for my quiet fixes, you'd already be drowning." Gasps echoed around the table. The board members leaned forward, scanning the papers I handed out. Daniel's face turned red. "You're lying," he spat. "You've always been jealous. This is pathetic." One of the board members spoke up, adjusting his glasses. "Actually, Daniel, these numbers, they're serious. If this is true, we're in danger." Daniel's mask cracked. He looked at our parents for backup. My mother's lips trembled, but she tried to sound firm. "Sarah, you can't do this. We are family. Families don't fight each other like this." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "Family? Where was family when you seated me by the kitchen at the wedding? Where was family when you cut me out of everything I helped build? You chose to erase me. And now you want me to stay quiet for the sake of family." Silence filled the room. I could feel the weight of every eye on me. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed steady. This company is mine too, and I will not let it collapse because of arrogance and favoritism. From this day forward, I am taking my rightful place. Not as a helper, not as a shadow, as a leader. Daniel shot to his feet, pointing a finger at me. "You can't do this. They'll never follow you." But one by one, the board members looked at me, then at him. Doubt filled their faces. A few nodded slightly in my direction. The tide was shifting. My father finally spoke, his voice low and strained. "Sarah, please, think carefully. This isn't the way." I turned to him, tears burning in my eyes but not falling. "I did think carefully. For years. And for years you ignored me. That ends now." Daniel's fists clenched, his voice rising. "You're nothing without me." I stepped closer, my voice calm and clear. "No, Daniel, you're nothing without me. And now everyone knows it." The room fell into silence again, heavy and final. Papers lay scattered across the glass table, the truth written in black and white. My parents sat frozen, Daniel fuming, the board staring at me with new respect. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. And in that moment, I didn't just win a seat at the table. I took the head of it. The days after the board meeting felt like stepping into a new world. For so long, I had lived in the shadow of my family, doing the work but never being seen. Now, everyone looked at me differently. The board members called me for decisions. The staff came to me for direction. Even the investors, once doubtful, began to trust me when they saw how quickly I addressed the problems Daniel had ignored. I didn't waste time celebrating. The company was in danger, and I knew saving it would take everything I had. I started by reviewing every contract, every deal, every account. I cut unnecessary spending, tightened the budget, and made sure the people who worked the hardest were finally recognized. It wasn't about revenge, it was about survival. If the company failed, all those years of work, not just mine but everyone, would crumble. I couldn't let that happen. Daniel tried to fight me at first. He stormed into meetings, shouting that I had no right. But every time, the evidence of his mismanagement spoke louder than his words. The board no longer trusted him. His voice grew smaller, weaker, until he stopped showing up at all. My parents, though, were harder to face. My mother cornered me one afternoon in the office hallway. Her eyes were wet, her voice trembling. "Sarah, you don't understand. We only wanted what was best for you. We thought protecting you from the pressure would keep you safe." I looked at her, the same woman who had always silenced me, who had told me to help, and nothing more. For years I would have crumbled under her guilt. But now I saw the truth. No, I said softly. You didn't want what was best for me. You wanted what was best for Daniel. You chose him again and again. And you left me behind. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. The wound was too deep to heal with words. My father tried a different approach. He came to my office, quiet and heavy. Sarah, he said, the family is breaking apart. Can't you find a way to forgive? To let Daniel lead, and you support him as before? I looked at him steadily. I supported him for years, Dad. And where did that get me? At a table by the kitchen door. No more. If the family breaks, it's because of the choices you made, not me. He said nothing after that. He just lowered his head and left. Some relatives began calling me, whispering apologies, saying they never agreed with how I was treated. They wanted me to forgive quickly, to move on. But I didn't rush to soothe their guilt. Forgiveness would take time, if it ever came at all. My focus had to stay on the company, on the people who depended on me, and on proving that I belonged here. And slowly, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, I wasn't chasing their approval. I wasn't begging to be seen. I was standing on my own, and people had no choice but to acknowledge me. Late one evening, as I sat alone in the boardroom with the city lights glowing outside, I thought about everything that had happened. The humiliation, the betrayal, the rage, it had all led me here. And while the pain was still sharp, it no longer controlled me. I didn't rise out of revenge. I rose because I refused to disappear. Because I deserved dignity. Because I had earned it. The company was no longer Daniel's dream. It was mine, and I was finally ready to lead it forward. One evening, weeks after everything had settled, I found myself sitting alone at my dining table. The house was quiet, the city lights glowing faintly through the window. A glass of wine sat untouched in front of me. I thought back to the wedding night, the clatter of dishes, the smell of grease, the sting of being placed near the kitchen as if I were nothing. I could still feel the heat of that humiliation, as if it had been branded into me. But then I looked around me now. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. The company was steady under my hand. People looked to me with respect, not dismissal. For the first time in my life, I was not waiting for a seat at someone else's table. I had built my own, and I sat at the head of it. I thought about my parents, about Daniel. A part of me still wished things could have been different, that family could have been what I always wanted it to be. But I knew better now. Respect is not something you beg for. Dignity is not something you wait to be given. You claim it. You live it. That night at the wedding, I had walked away from the table they set for me. Tonight, I sat in a place they could never take from me. I raised my glass, not to them, but to myself, and I whispered the truth I had learned the hard way. No one gets to write me out of my own story. Hey besties, thanks for watching till the end. Imagine being humiliated at your own brother's wedding, only to rise up and claim the power your family tried to erase. Betrayal hurts, but sometimes it gives us the strength we never knew we had. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more powerful dramas. See you in the next one.